Pacifica. This is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting live from Copenhagen. It's Climate Countdown.
Our goal this week is to get all the support we can behind the most vulnerable, poor nations on the planet. They're showing unbelievable courage in sticking up against the pressure from the U.S. and others to just cut a deal and go away.
Bill McKibben, the founder of 350.org, joins us to talk about the UN climate talks, the widening divide between rich and poor nations, and the power of protest. We'll also speak with Kenyan global justice activist Wahu Kara. Then, who provides the U.S. with the most oil? Canada. That's right. It comes from the Alberta tar sands, described as the world's biggest single industrial source of carbon emissions. Indigenous people marched this week on the Canadian Embassy in Copenhagen.
The Alberta tar sands are not only destroying my people and my land, but they are creating the largest CO2 emissions from one single project in the world at the cost of my family, my community, my culture, my way of life.
The heart of the Obama administration's effort to reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions is a market-based system to trade carbon known as cap and trade.
Their latest bubble just burst, and now they have a new idea for a market: trading carbon pollution. They're about to develop a new $3 trillion bubble. But when this one bursts, it won't just take down our stock portfolios, it could take down everything.
Today, we'll host a debate on cap and trade. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting live from Copenhagen. Negotiations have resumed at the Copenhagen Climate Summit following Monday's walkout by developing countries. The African-led protests centered around concerns richer nations are trying to kill the Kyoto Protocol by merging it with a separate negotiating track. Kamal Jumoy, the chair of the African bloc, said poorer countries would never accept the abandonment of Kyoto.
The Kyoto Protocol took 7 years to enter into force. The next treaty, I'm sure that it will take more than that, even if there will be a political will, because this process missed and lost all confidence and the main transparency in it from the most developing countries.
The dispute was resolved with an agreement to resume informal talks along separate tracks. Meanwhile, outside the summit, Danish police are intensifying their crackdown on climate justice activists. Late last night, riot police raided Copenhagen's autonomous community of Christiania as it played host to a party organized by protest groups. Witnesses say police fired tear gas directly at the party as attendees were dancing and gathering inside. Some protesters were said to have thrown bottles at police and set fire to barricades. More than 200 people were reportedly arrested. The Christiania raid comes ahead of a massive act of civil disobedience planned for Wednesday. Organizers of the Reclaim Power action say they'll disrupt the summit and hold a people's assembly giving voice to those calling for climate justice. We'll have more from Copenhagen after headlines. In healthcare news, independent Senator Joseph Lieberman appears to have successfully derailed the latest Senate Democratic health care proposal. Last week, Democrats reached agreement on a so-called compromise to abandon the public insurance option but expand Medicare by lowering the age of eligibility to 55. Lieberman had previously said he supported Medicare expansion. But on Sunday, Lieberman surprised Democrats and announced he would now oppose the measure unless both the Medicare provision and any form of government-backed insurance plan were excluded. On Monday, Lieberman emerged from a meeting with top White House officials and Democratic senators to say he's, quote, encouraged his demands will be met. President Obama met with top financial executives at the White House Monday in what he called an effort to encourage lending to struggling Americans. The White House says Obama asked for more loans to small businesses and homeowners and support for a congressional overhaul of financial regulation.
Given the difficulty business people are having as lending has declined, and given the exceptional assistance banks received to get them through a difficult time, we expect them to explore every responsible way to help get our economy moving again. If they wish to fight common sense consumer protections, That's a fight I'm more than willing to have.
Obama's call comes as a number of bailed-out firms continue to repay their taxpayer loans. On Monday, Citibank and Wells Fargo said they're moving ahead with repayments, which would help them reject government demands. In what some called an illustration of the government's weakened position, the CEOs of the three largest bailed-out firms, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Citigroup, did not attend the meeting. They'd waited until Monday to travel to Washington, but weather problems delayed their planes. The meeting was held as new figures showed CEOs of the top 10 failed or bailed-out Wall Street firms were paid an average $28.9 million in the years leading up to the nation's financial meltdown. According to Public Citizen, the executives' average pay this decade amounts to 575 times the median income for U.S. families. Meanwhile, in New York, hundreds of protesters marched on the offices of the banking giant J.P. Morgan Chase to demand better treatment of customers facing foreclosure. Darren Duarte of the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, known as NACA, said Chase's policies are throwing homeowners out onto the streets.
It's Christmas time, people are being thrown out in the streets, and I think bankers could do more. The president is talking a lot about it, but he's not requiring them or taking action. We wanted to take action today.
The protest was held as part of NACA's Save the Dream tour to pressure banks to restructure mortgages. The group says over 350,000 people have taken part in 11 cities nationwide. In Pakistan, the U.S. is reportedly considering expanding drone attacks beyond tribal areas into the major city of Quetta. The Los Angeles Times reports senior U.S. officials have argued in favor of launching or threatening the attacks as a means to pressure the Pakistani government to crack down on Taliban leaders. Quetta has a population of 850,000. The Iranian government has announced plans to try 3 Americans detained after mistakenly hiking into Iran earlier this year. It's unclear when the trial will begin or what charges will be applied. Last month, an Iranian prosecutor accused the 3 of espionage. On Monday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton rejected Iran's charges.
The 3 young people who were detained by the Iranians have absolutely no connection with any kind of action against the Iranian state or government. In fact, they were out hiking and unfortunately, apparently, allegedly, walked across an unmarked boundary. We appeal to the Iranian leadership to release these 3 young people and free them as soon as possible.
Iran's announcement comes days after it called on the U.S. to release 11 Iranian citizens it says are jailed in U.S. prisons. The United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo is being accused of complicity in the killings of hundreds of innocent civilians. In a new report, Human Rights Watch says the UN mission has abetted the killings of at least 1,400 civilians and a number of rapes. The report calls on the UN to immediately suspend its collaboration with the Congolese army. In Britain, former Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni has canceled a scheduled visit after a British court issued a warrant for her arrest. The warrant cited Livni's role in the U.S.-backed Israeli attack on Gaza nearly a year ago that killed over 1,300 Palestinians, most of them civilians. It's the first time a British court has issued a warrant against a sitting or former Israeli minister. The warrant was rescinded after the court determined Livni would not be visiting Britain. Chile is headed to a runoff vote after Sunday's presidential election failed to produce a clear winner. Right-wing billionaire Sebastián Piñera came out ahead with 44% of the vote. He'll face off against former Chilean President Eduardo Frei in a second round next month.